Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast, sponsored by the Draft Professor. We are here with the Big O, Jerry Ostroski, and Owen. We're about to dive into some offensive linemen, but before we do that, we're all three of us are Bills fans. That's ironic. We don't usually do that at Draft Professor. We're all three podcasters are from the same team. But Owen, how did you think the Bills' offensive line held up against the Chiefs?
I thought they had a strong outing. I haven't really had a problem with their offensive line in recent matchups against them. I know Spags is going to get some pressure with his blitzes, and there's only so much you can do with a five-man protection front, which the Bills run a lot of, which is really important, especially when you're watching offensive line prospects for like your personal team, our team being the Bills. You have to always keep that in mind where they're not going to get a lot of help. They're going to be on islands a lot of times, and can these guys kind of hold up on that when you're projecting them to a team like that? So they're always a fun team to watch the offensive line for.
Yeah, I mean, I think they did a good job. I think a big part of some of their issues was they had a hard time getting to Curtis Bolton, the middle linebacker from Kansas City. He's real fast. So you'd watch him early. They tried to run the pitch stuff that they ran against Charlotte. They just McGovern couldn't get to Bolton. And so by the end of the game, you saw him running pretty much downhill, running some inside gap scheme stuff. And then they were also trying to run inside zone, maybe a little bit of outside zone with an emphasis of the backside cut, almost turning it into inside zone. But, yeah, a lot of that had to do with them, the inability to really kind of have an answer for Bolton early because he is very athletic and aggressive.
Yeah, so I am curious to see if there's a couple of offensive linemen specifically on this show that because we've covered them on other podcasts and stuff, I think you're going to like them, but we haven't compared notes backstage, everybody. So whatever reaction you see from Jerry and Owen that's about to come up on these players is completely authentic and not rehearsed. We're going to cover these 9 offensive linemen: DJ Campbell from Texas, Giovanni Hadi from Michigan, Anez Cooper from Miami, Emmanuel Pregnon, the 3rd Oregon offensive lineman that we have covered, Lyndon Cooper from Pittsburgh, Jake Slaughter from Florida, Jude Bowry from Boston College, Lance Hurd from Tennessee, finishing up with Kadyn Proctor from Alabama. Owen, what do you have on DJ Campbell?
So DJ Campbell, for those who weren't around for last year's draft cycle, was somebody that we covered when we covered the trenches last year. He was a player that me and Newt covered on our Wednesday show, which is now more centered on D linemen, and since I'm doing this now with Jerry. So, but for me, last year, a lot of the stuff that I didn't really love with Campbell kind of started to formulate a little bit this year with some of the games I watched, but at the same time, some of the drawbacks I had or some of the limitations I saw in his game continued to show out. So he's a big dude, 6'3", 321, can actually move quite a bit for a guy his size, can get out in front as a puller. They used him a bit in the screen game, especially last year. I remember some of the games I've watched from the 2024 season. He was able to get out front. And for the most part, he's going to use that power to displace guys and be someone you can run like a power gap scheme through, and then also have like a little bit more of an athletic edge. He's not my favorite when it comes to operating in that system. And last year I had him with like a day 3 grade. And this year I am a little bit higher on him than I was previously, but still I'm coming in around that same range just from him being a guy that is a little bit sloppier with some of his technique consistency. And so just a guy that I have a love-hate relationship with him, and I'm curious to see what Jerry has to say because he's going to have fresh eyes on him. This is a guy that I had some pre-existing bias against. So, Jerry, what did you see with DJ Campbell?
Yeah, I see a really good physical specimen as far as what he looks like. Arm length is good. He's got good base. He handles the bull rush, can anchor, and those types of things. I think he is athletic. I think he's a bit out of control. I think he has problems with his control due to his limited hand usage. I think he's got to get a lot better with his hand usage. And I think that's one area as far as offensive linemen go that develop. Some of them, it's the last thing they develop. You know, you have to have hands on defensive linemen to have that balance and that kind of smooth movement that you want to see out of somebody that's playing up front. He's got limited hand usage. He's got good torque, but he tends to be one of those guys that'll engage, and because of his limited hand usage, his hands are not good, and by the end of the rep, he rises up from bottom to top. He gets kind of high as he tries to finish, and which gets him out of control, and it turns him almost into more of a torque player than, physically moving guys with his feet. He likes to grab and kind of torque and hip guys around a little bit. So I think he's a guy that has a chance at the league. I think he has all the physical tools, and somebody's going to take him relatively high. I mean, I would think he's probably like a 4 or 5 round guy. Some people have him rated as high as day 2 and round 2. I don't see that, but again, the draft is finicky. There's teams out there, only takes one. If they really, really like him, they'll take the chance on him. One thing about Campbell, he does play in one of the premier leagues in the country, plays against top-notch talent all the time. Watched him quite a bit when they played Oklahoma. So, I think there's tools there. A lot of it has to be refined. Natural size, natural anchor, natural strength. If he ever learns to use those hands better, then that will help set him up through the block so that he's not missing, then having to raise up and try to save it, so to speak, as opposed to maintaining through finish.
So, Jerry, do we see DJ Campbell as guard? Definitely not a tackle, definitely not a center.
No, he's not a tackle, not a center. He's a swing guard. I think if he makes a team, it's because of he was drafted, and he's a backup. He's a backup guard his first year or maybe a guy that's inactive for most of the season is what I look at DJ Campbell. And then you try to get him better with his technique and different things of that nature. But, like Owen, there are some things, like I said, that you can see as far as his, that are frustrating. I mean, he gets the blocks, he gets there good, but then due to the lack of technique, he'll lose them and then have to grab and torque or wrestle, and fight probably a little bit too hard, a little bit harder than he needs to, because he gets there on time. He just doesn't have the proper techniques to finish it right.
And do you see DJ Campbell as scheme specific, or do you think he could play with most schemes?
I think I'd like him in one specific scheme over the other, which would be more of that power gap, because he has that ability to get off, be a puller, kick out, and clear out some lanes. I do think that he has athleticism enough to not, keep his head above water if you ask him to be in a more zone-heavy system where you're asking him to gift flat at lateral and still continue to have some power while he's driving along that line of scrimmage. But for me, if I'm going to be asking him to come in and be the mental starter, if he can clean up those technique issues, it's going to be in more of a power gap where I'm asking him to come downhill, bury some blocks, stay low, and hopefully be able to be a guy that can get that displacement up front. And then once you're looking to splash in your zone looks, he's a guy that you can really rely on, as opposed to some of the other guys who are going to be, a little bit less athletically inclined, but have that same kind of power profile. But the problem to me is going to be, can he stay on the field for pass protection specifically? Because those same problems Jerry was talking about with the hand usage was what I had down in my notes from last year's cycle when we watched him. Was I didn't really see a lot of progression with that, especially when it came to just hand fighting, getting clean looks and clean wins and reps with where he's able to reset his hands and be able to keep that control. So for him to not have that much progress in that area, he has all the athletic tools and all the traits you'd like, but it's going to be a question of whether or not is that really going to take another step if he's already been given a year of okay, fix this problem at an SEC school like Texas with more of a pro style coach as Sarkisian.
Yeah, I think this is an NFL O lineman's type project. Those guys tend to believe they're better coaches than everybody else because they're in the league, and this is a guy that has everything, just needs to be refined. And you bring him in and you try to do that over the first couple of years. I do think he's fine in gap schemes. I think he's pretty good on short pulls. I don't know how much longer pull type tracks and things like that. He might get a little heavy legged, but if he is on the side that needs to pull, he's adequate doing that and those types of things. But yeah, there's definitely technique work that will help him quite a bit.
Okay. Next player, Jerry, Giovanni Hadi from Michigan. What did you see?
Well, I saw a guy that if you look at his build, he is big. He's 6'5", 315. But again, he's like a Kadyn Green from Missouri, kind of thin-ankled, thin-calfed, gives him the appearance of being rather top-heavy, and he kind of plays top-heavy. He's a step, grab, and wrestle guy. And by the end of the rep, he's usually high in the rep, and he's trying to wrestle and turn guys that way. Physically, he's got the tools as far as size and those types of things. I wasn't overwhelmed with his technique. Like I said, it's more of and if you watch Michigan's offensive line, a lot of them are this way. They're just big, huge bodies, and they step in the zone scheme. They grab. One guy goes up, one guy stays on the down lineman, and then it becomes a wrestling match. And that's where I saw the inconsistencies with him. Again, you've got hand usage issues. How quick is that first step? Okay. Are you getting that first step in the ground? Are you getting your aiming point? Are you throwing those hands? And are you getting that movement? I didn't see much natural movement out of him. Like I said, I think he's probably more of a space eater and a wrestler than he is anything else. He does have a thick lower half, although below the knees, I don't think he's very thick. He does have a lot of weight up top, but he'll have some issues just because, again, another guy that's not very good with his hands. And because of that, and it's funny when you play O-line, and I think Owen could say this when he coaches kids, when you don't have proper hand usage, it causes you to panic. And panic out of alignment is the hands go outside and they grab the pads. You kind of got that crab punch as opposed to inside punch or independent hand usage and those types of things. So he's adequate. He's efficient enough on the second level. He can pull a little bit. I saw some film where he did pull and those types of things. He can generate angles and all that stuff. But I just have some issues again with him, like Campbell. Without hands, you can't translate your power through the defensive lineman. You can bring your feet, you can bring your hips, but if you don't have anything to translate that power to the guy you're trying to move, it's hard to move him. And then therefore with Hadi, you get that catch and wrestle type player. And by the end of the rep, he's high and his back's bowed and he's trying to strain this way. And that's not the most efficient way to do it.
Owen, what do you think?
I agree, especially with the copying him back to the fact that we did him after Campbell right back to back. He's another guy where you look at him, he's got the size. You'd expect him to be this guy to be able to throw dudes around. And there are reps where when he's able to line it up and get a good strike off, he can manipulate dudes and clear out some lanes. But for the most part, overall, I didn't love him as a mover guy. He did not play with his hands all that great, especially in the run game. I cannot stand, and Jerry mentioned it with coaching, when I coach offensive linemen, and then I coach younger kids, and then you're still teaching them the ropes. Then you come here, and I'm watching guys for NFL prospects, and you see them consistently grab on the outside of the shoulders, My old offensive line coach, when he was teaching us, once told us, boys, we don't grab for shoulders, we grab for boobies. And that was what you gotta get in that chest protector, because that's where you're gonna be able to manipulate and translate all the power like Jerry was talking about. So you can have all the size in the world, but if you can't translate that to consistent reps and control guys, because those other guys you're going against, especially a guy at Michigan that Hadi's at, where you're going to have bigger boys and then D-tackle, they're also going to be able to move you. So if you're not playing with absolute perfect technique, at times you're also going to be made to look a fool of. So there are plays where I like what he's got, especially there's some plays in pass protection where he does not lined up head on. He's gotten a little bit more space to move, and he can kind of settle himself, because I don't love his get off, and then maybe get a quick punch off. He is 6'5" as an interior offensive lineman, so he has a bit more length than you're used to. He can get his hands on, and he does get a good punch in there. I do like some of those reps, especially because then he's able to really show off that size. But for the most part, when it comes to consistently being there down to down to down, and being a guy that you're trying to project to go against bigger, stronger, faster athletes, especially on the interior, he's the kind of guy that I'm going to be banking on to come in and even have like a prominent role as a primary backup, especially early on in his career, until he can really adjust those technique issues. And then even then, unlike Campbell, I don't think he's like that high level of an athlete to overcome once he gets that fixed up to really be a starter ceiling type player.
And these inefficiencies and deficiencies with hand placement and hand usage really comes to fruition in pass pro. Because if your hands are wide and your defensive lineman gets a long arm or he gets his hands inside of you, you tend to get walked back. And if you watch him, he gets walked back in pass pro. Why is that? Because you have no translation of power. I don't care if I sink my hips and drop down and back or however you want to do it. You can't stop anybody if your hands are outside, because there's no buffer between you and that defensive lineman. I mean, my youngest son plays defensive lineman in college, and he'll tell you, I mean, he's trying to get inside hand placement as well. Both sides of the ball are trying to do that. And, it's when you get the outside grab guys, a lot of times it's a reaction to not being good with hands, and it's a panic type move. And I figure at the worst, I'm grabbing him. And while it might be a stalemate, at least I'm not getting beat right away. And that's kind of what you see out of this guy.
Okay. So if I'm listening to you guys, I think you like DJ Campbell from Texas more than Giovanni Hadi from Michigan.
If I had to make it, if I had to make an answer, yes, I would like Campbell better than I like Hadi. I think Hadi's a free agent. I don't think if he's a draftable guy, it's somewhere late, at the earliest 5, latest 7. But I see him more as a free agent type project, and you draft him because he's 6'5", 315, and I'm an NFL coach, and if I can clean up his technique deficiencies while he's on the practice squad, we might have something. And he does come from a blue blood, and he has pedigree because he plays for him. So, unfortunately, in the world of NFL football, those guys tend to get more chances than maybe somebody from a G6 or a lesser conference.
Yeah, I think when you're trying to the pitch, like if you're giving an elevator pitch for either of these players, neither of them are going to come off ringing endorsement where you step off that elevator and you're going to be happy to be having these guys as your absolute have to pick one or the other. But with Campbell having some upside when it comes to athletically, they both have the same problems when it comes to needing to be polished up and making that technique really solidify itself to be able to be a potential starter, because if not, these pros are going to take advantage of that real quickly. But if you're going to tell me that, okay, one guy, if you can fix both their technique equally and then you put them on the field, I think Campbell would have a better ceiling than a guy like Hadi would be. So I have Campbell with draftable grade similar to Jerry. I'm more towards the prior to UDFA grade with Hadi.
Okay. So, Owen, is your grade better for Anez Cooper from Miami?
Then Hadi, I do have a better grade on Cooper than with Hadi. 4-year player here from Miami, logged over 200 snaps in each of those seasons. And he's a guy that, another one, really weird size. You'd think with who Miami has at right tackle and with Maligoa, and then now Anez Cooper, who's like the supersized interior blocker, they wouldn't have just flipped the two of them or worked with one or the other, because that's the situation with Maligoa, is him being a little bit undersized or more of an interior type player. But Cooper, for me, don't love his build. He has a bit of a bad weight on him. You could see it from some angles, but you can definitely see that if he pared down a bit from 350 to even the 330s, I think he'd be much better off, especially with that 6'6" frame. But a guy that I was surprised with how well he moved for his size, especially laterally. They had him moving and doing some moving pocket stuff and having him reset, specifically when they're trying to get Carson Beck rolling out and get him in some space. So he has the length that shows up. He is 6'6" as an interior offensive lineman. That does show up as well when he's at operating space. He is a guy who has size that I don't absolutely love as a people mover. Like, I'm not saying he can't get some push up front, but for me, he's not a guy that if I'm going to pick out of this group to come downhill and win a one-on-one block and clear out the gap, he's not going to be the guy in this group that I choose from. That's because he does have that size with the 6'6". It's not the best when it comes to getting down and out leveraging guys, especially one-on-one in block. So for me, he's a player that is a multiple year starter for a team that has had some success and has had some playoff aspirations in the past, and he looks comfortable out there. He's definitely one of the better interior offensive line players they have. And I do think that his blend of size and some more rare mobility stuff and his experience starting is pretty good for me. And I do think that his athleticism, as well as some of the other stuff that he has bring to his game, make him a bit more desirable than a guy like an Hadi is.
First and foremost, full disclosure, I hate their offense. I hate Miami's offense so bad. And it does a guy like Anez Cooper no service to play in it, because they take guys that are 6'6", 350 like this, and they're basically space eaters. They're not really moving anybody physically. It's sideways steps and hip to hip and hip bump and eat up space. It's maddening to me, especially when you look at the guy that plays next to him, who's probably could very well be the highest drafted offensive lineman in this year's draft. I don't like their offense. I do think he's lost some weight, Owen. I watched some games of him. He's been 350s. I think he needs to be in the 330s, like you said, to be efficient, to be productive. He can't play at 350. You would think that a guy, and I kind of sound like I'm being redundant here, and I guess I am. You would think a guy this big would really be a mover of people. Like that would be his jam, right? That would be what he does well. And I just don't see much of it. And a lot of it has to do with the way they play offense and the way what they ask him to do in the run blocking. I know this stance here, he's in a 3-point stance. I don't think I've saw him in a 3-point stance on film. I don't think the whole offensive line, except for the center, got in a 3-point stance on film. And, you know, I've made myself known on that I'm not a big fan of it. I think he's got power that's untapped because of kind of reckless play. And again, this is another guy that's not great with his hands. And we talked about this last week in college football. You're seeing players come out in college that are not as good as they used to be because of the transfer portal. It's that simple. We don't coach kids anymore. We go out and find everybody else's kids and bring them in and hope that they are already finished products. I was very surprised at how he moves in space. I was expecting him to be a lumberer. There is a clip from the Louisville game. If you need to go find the Louisville game and watch it. He gets out on a screen and about 20 yards downfield, as my old offensive line coach at Buffalo used to say, Carl Mock, it was forward over rooster. And he takes a safety and absolutely cleans him, decleats him, and puts him on his back. It was one of the more impressive screen blocks I've ever seen in my life. He can get downfield and move. I think this guy will do much better when he gets in the pros. I really do. I think he's an early day 3 guy right now. Somebody may fall in love with him and say day 2, but I think he's probably anywhere from 4th, 5th round type of guy because of his intangibles and size and everything else. I think he can play in multiple schemes. I don't think he's just like a gap power guy or a duo guy. I think he can do different things. And a lot of it has to do with he's untapped as far as potential goes. He brings natural strength and size with him. He can throw guys around. He is a competitor. He will compete. He plays hard. And I appreciate that. I do think a lot of what he's got going on is limited by the offense they play in. And I would love to see him in a true blue, like if he played at Bama, I would understand, or he played at Georgia, I would understand what he can do as far as moving people, because his hand would be on the ground and he would be coming off the ball and throwing hands and all those things. So out of the 3 guys we've discussed as far as swing guards, and I think Anez is a swing guard as well, probably like him better than the of the 3. So of all 3, I like him the most. And I just think that he's got fixable issues. But again, the thing that he's really got to concentrate on is the fact that he cannot play at 350. He's got to be in the 330s. And if he can get into the 20s, that would be amazing. But some of these guys are so dang big, it's just asking way too much to think they can get that low. But 330s, and I think he's down now because in his uniform, and I don't think he looked as heavy as he does in this picture. He's okay.
Yeah, if you try to find just like true pass drop sets with him in pass protection, where he's able to just ball snapped, he's getting depth, trying to take on a block. It's near impossible in Miami's offense because everything is an RPO off of to marry that run and pass game. I can't wait for Jerry to finally watch his first Wake Forest offensive lineman. It is like the Miami offense, but like on steroids. I cannot stand it, especially when trying to watch their offensive line players, because there's not a single clean rep where you can distinguish what's a run versus what's a pass in the entire game.
Right, and it's really hard to take. It's just like, and granted, it's like offensive line coaches in the league have to adjust what they do, because if you're going to try to take old school offensive linemen all the time, you're not going to have any prospects. It's just like what they've done with quarterbacks and tweaking the offenses to cater to these college quarterbacks. College isn't changing, and some of these guys will make some adjustments, but still, I have not seen anybody in the league come out and take 70-some snaps all in a 2-point stance. I haven't seen it yet. So if you ever see it, please let me know.
Yeah, no, and I was just checking to see when we're covering Wake Forest. That's a few weeks from today.
Oh, looking forward to that, Jim, so much.
Okay. The next offensive lineman, Jerry, it's the third Oregon offensive lineman, and you were saying that you mentioned something on your radio show. Feel free to share what you said on the radio and talk about Emmanuel Pregnon from Oregon.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about Oregon, and we're talking actually about the college football playoff poll that came out tonight for the first one of the season. And we're talking about Oregon and everything, and my belief that Oregon is still one of the best teams in the country, even though they probably were going to be slotted around that 7-8 spot, and I think they were slotted at 8. But this is a team that rolls out 3 of 5 that are all going to go in the top, at least 5 rounds, if you consider the center, maybe not till 5, but I liked him quite a bit, probably top 4 rounds with 2 guys that have potential of being definitely round 2 and 1 maybe sneaking into the first round. I like Pregnon quite a bit. I think he's a competitor. He's aggressive. He gets after people. He's comfortable in multiple schemes. He can pull. He can play on the second level. I think he's got great anchor. He's got great power. He limits pocket compression with that power. He's able to sink and hold his space and win his spot. And this is the other thing I love about Pregnon is he's untapped as well. Like his ceiling is much higher than what you're seeing at Oregon. And again, this is another guy, and they play more. I would say they play more pro set, but they don't necessarily play, a true blue like we're going to see when you study Kadyn Proctor. Okay, a true pro style offense. This is still more of the gimmicked up, high tempo, all that type of stuff. But I really appreciate him. I think he's a good player. He's got torque and drive. He can. The thing about him is he's another one, and it's a product of these offenses. And until they can get out of this habit, you're going to always see it on film. They're low to start, and then because you're in a 2-point, a lot of times, and he does get in a 3-point and looks good in it. You get that rise as the block goes on. As the block's playing out, they get taller and taller and taller late in reps. And, you'd like to see him keep that pad level down to help him sustain blocks through finish. We talked about adequate torque and drive, maybe sustain, nitpicking, maybe, be able to finish blocks a little bit better. He's got the competitiveness with him, but because his pads get high, he has a little bit trouble finishing and those types of things. And he does, like his counterpart next to him, has a little bit of problem world. He plays a little bit out of control. He's so athletic that real athletic guys sometimes have issues with getting out of control just because they are so athletic. So, if you can get out of that and do those different things. But, no, I like him a lot. This is a top-level guy. This is I think he's a round 2 guy, definitely round 3 guy. And if he progresses as the season goes along and someone falls in love with him that's drafting, 27th or lower, and maybe there was a run on lineman earlier, and we know that there's not a ton of tackles, there's not a ton of really highly graded there's not a ton of first-round grade offensive linemen. If you really need one and you're willing to make that need pick, he could sneak into the bottom quarter, the bottom end of the first round. So I don't know what Owen feels about him, but 6'5", 318, redshirt seniors, played a lot of football, a lot of experience. I like him quite a bit.
So hold on a second, Owen. So Jerry, I got a question for you. Do you like Ione from Penn State more than Pregnon from Oregon?
I haven't seen a couple of guys I want to see yet, but right now, I don't even know if I want to say this and give it away.
You don't have okay, we can wait.
No, I'll say it. Ione right now is probably my favorite guy as far as offensive lineman in the draft. I think he's got the highest ceiling and the most potential out of any of them, and he's already playing at a high level. I think he has a chance to be really, really special. And I put something on Twitter the other day, and I don't know if you saw it, something that impressed me. And you if you know me long enough, you'll understand that a lot of these guys, when I evaluate them and look at them, stuff they do off the field is equally as important as what they do on the field, maybe more important than what they do on the field. When you're talking about franchise cornerstone pieces, they just got beat. They lost their coach. They're playing for an interim coach. They're playing the season out. They're miserable after being, preseason number 2 in the country, and they're walking off the field at Ohio State, and they're in the tunnel, and he's on one part of the ramp that's higher than the other, and there's a fence in between or a railing, and he looks down and he's getting ridiculed by the Ohio State fans, and he notices that the equipment manager's struggling to get the cart up the ramp. He hops the railing and goes behind and helps the guy push the cart up the ramp. And I know that doesn't seem like a big deal to most, but it's a big deal to me because it just shows that his off the field is as good or better than his on the field. And GMs will notice that. People will notice it. That means when those scouts and those GMs and coaches go to Penn State, and the first person they're going to go talk to is not the head coach or the line coach. The first person they'll go talk to is a strength coach, because that's where the work's done. And they're going to know what kind of person he is and how he works. They're going to go see the strength coach first. That strength coach is going to tell them how good of a kid he is. So right now, he's my favorite player as far as offensive lineman coming out this year in the 2026 draft.
Okay. So, we covered Pregnon last draft cycle, and I know that he wasn't day 2 when we graded him last year, but it sounds like him going back to school was a good move. What did you see from Pregnon this year?
Yeah, and that was always what my consistent thing was with him, was like if he went back to school, and I said that last cycle, that I thought he would be able to improve his game because he has the stuff that you look for, right? And Jerry did a great job describing him. Just going and finding pictures of this dude, like he is pushing 320, and you can see it's all like in his arms and his chest. He's just a massive human being, can still get out there and move, throw dudes around. The fact that they have a 3-man lineup on the left side there with Lalulu, Pregnon, and then World, they knew that they were going to be playing in the Big Ten, and they were like, all right, cool, we'll play your style of football and just absolutely kick the shit out of you up front, especially on that left side of their line. So he feeds into that a lot, and he's also a player that can do a bit more than even like just line up, block the guy in front of you. He can do the stuff that Jerry was talking about where you can get into space, block at the second level, be able to lock and attach and drive guys out of there. So I definitely have him now as day 2 with me. I'm not as high on him as Jerry is, but I do still think that he is a guy that I'm going to be picking over a couple of the other guys we've already talked about in this episode and in previous episodes, and has definitely gone up since the first time I got an eyes on him. His going back to school and going from USC to Oregon has definitely improved his stock substantially in my eyes.
And one other thing about it is that picture. What is he doing in that picture?
Snapping.
Yep. He's not just a swing guard. He can also play center if he had to. So there's multiple positional potential with this kid.
Yep. And there is a 4th Oregon offensive lineman we'll be covering, not today, but there's still one more on the list. So Alex Harkey, who is the right tackle, is draft eligible. We will be covering him in a couple of weeks. Okay, Lyndon Cooper from Pittsburgh, listed as interior offensive lineman, probably a center. Owen, what did you see with Lyndon Cooper from Pittsburgh?
Yeah, this is a guy that I got eyes on him, and he's a player that you can definitely see, like, okay, they have him listed as center. He's played consistently at center for Pitt, and Pitt goes against a decent amount of competition. A lot of these guys had a lot of crossover with the teams they play against, which is always my favorite to do, especially when you're watching batches like this, because you can see how one guy reacts to other matchups specifically, even when they're like outside of the conference, like some of these other guys are. Like, you're not going to see a lot of matchup crossovers between Pitt and Oregon. So whenever you get a chance, like with Pitt playing Louisville, I believe it was, who was it earlier we talked about was playing Louisville as well. Miami.
Oh, yeah, Miami.
They you get to see and compare and contrast with their matchups there specifically. So for me, getting eyes on Cooper against those teams that have those same kind of defenders was a priority for me. And I did like some of the stuff I saw with him. Another dude who's, 315, probably getting up to that 320 range. A lot more squat and dense than a guy like Pregnon is at 6'2" instead of 6'5". And you can see that he's definitely able to get into guys when he gets able to latch. You can drive them off the ball. Has some power in that frame just from having such a dense center of mass. And you can also see that with some of the more natural anchor, being able to absorb contact, especially when he can't get like hands on immediately. He can really drop his hips and not allowed to give up a lot of ground there. However, though, I don't love him as an athlete overall. I think he's a bit stiff. when he's coming up and looking for work. He's not the most agile, getting back and forth, changing direction, and moving laterally. So for me, I think I like him as a guy that you bring in. If he can move to a guard spot and be more of a versatile piece, you could definitely utilize him in a bit more spots and up his draft stock that way. But from him just being a consistent center at Pitt and then just not having the best physical profile, in my opinion, I do think he's on the lower end of the guys we're going to be talking about today.
This is a fun evaluation, Cooper. I enjoyed looking at him. I agree with Owen. He's a late round guy. I think he's probably 6'7", maybe if there's, not a run on lineman, he falls into the free agent category. I think once you get him on a team, it's going to be hard to get him off. I think he's going to be a guy that sticks around a little bit, that they might, if they want to keep him as a swing center guard, they can, or put him on the practice squad. I enjoyed him quite a bit. He's stout. Okay, he is stout. He is not long at all. There's no length in this guy at all. And when you watch him against four-man fronts and he's uncovered, he does an adequate job. He finds work. He directs traffic, directs his linemen, gets them where they're supposed to be, has some ability on the second level. Wouldn't say that's his greatest strength. But when you watch the film, like with NC State, which he was an NC State transfer, when you watch NC State, they play a lot of two-gap scheme stuff. They play a lot of head-up nose. And when he's got a guy on his body, he's going to win that fight. I mean, he's going to beat you up. I mean, this is a small area, quick dude. It's a phone booth guy. And it was funny how the difference in play once you went from an uncovered look to a covered look, just the difference. I mean, you look at him again, average length and range. We talked about it. He can reach and do those things, but he's got to be really correct with his footwork and his anticipation, because he doesn't have the length to make up for some mistakes. Sometimes in recovery, if he gets there late or somebody makes a move, he tries to recover, he'll get the hands outside the framework a little bit and get a little bit into a wrestling mode. I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't wrestle in high school. But again, you look at intangibles, and, Bill Parcells used to call him, yeah, I know all that stuff about him, but tell me about the things you can't see. What are the intangibles you can't see? I mean, this is a adorable player who's been a team captain. Remington Trophy watch list guy, and he's got a lot of intangibles that come with him, a lot of leadership. So, while I think athletic profile, definitely not a high draft guy. I think he's a low round guy, if not a high priority free agent. But I think once you get him on a roster, it might be tough to get rid of him, because he has those intangibles and he's got that competitiveness, and he's stronger than an ox, man. I mean, he's got strength to him and natural anchor and movement. So, yeah, this guy was fun to watch. I enjoyed him, and I like seeing the differences as far as playing against an uncovered look to a covered look, and just how different he looked as a player.
Yeah, it was definitely something I had in my notes specifically was when I was eager to see him against Zero Tech. I think the Florida State game was where they put a Zero Tech on him quite a bit, and that was where I was also looking at it like, okay, I had questions about how quickly he can get out of his stance and really fire off into guys, especially when he's head up, when he doesn't have that space afforded to him. That was definitely where you started to see him struggle a bit more. So I really love that you pointed that out, Jerry, because that was something I also highlighted in here that I forgot to mention.
These thick, dense guys in those situations have the ability to get leverage in small movement and small spaces, if that makes sense. They can get movement without, just having to roll off the ball like a crazy man, throw hands on targets in that way. I mean, these shorter, stouter guys reminds me of a guy I played with in Buffalo named Mike Devlin, who was very, very similar. And, they have that ability to get movement without having to really get that much of a head start. But, yeah, cool evaluation. I like Cooper a lot. We'll see what happens. But I'll be actually following him. I'd like to see what happens with him.
So, and Owen, I like it when you point out which games you watch, because the Florida State, you've got a defensive tackle coming at you from Florida State with you and Newt on Wednesdays. You also have a defensive tackle from Louisville that's coming at you and Newt on Wednesdays as well when you do defensive linemen. So those are teams with draft eligible, like Zero Tech and One Tech. So, okay, Jake Slaughter from Florida. Owen, Is he your center one that you've evaluated so far?
We go right from Jerry talking about how these shorter slaughter guys don't have to fire out the ball and get hands into guys, and then just kind of roll off and do some short area stuff, and go right into the guy that is just the guy when you talk about getting off the ball and getting hands on it and attacking right away. So for me, this was a question because I had this guy tied with a grade for number one center with me, and it's actually someone we've talked about already on this show previously. I went back and I watched more of Brian Parker from Duke, and with the idea of him being a center, and I have him graded equally to Slaughter right now. I'm becoming a lot bigger of a fan of his, and I personally, if I had to make a selection, probably would go Slaughter right now, but Parker is right there with him. And if you caught me on a different day, I'd probably say something else. But yeah, Slaughter is definitely a guy that, again, covered him last year, was not the biggest fan. I think Newt was pretty high on him. I was kind of the outlier, thinking maybe I needed to see more of him unlock some more of that movement ability. He was definitely a super athlete, being able to get out of the stance and get in the guys and get hands on, be a good technician, and be able to utilize that speed and movement to get guys and open up lanes, wall off, seal, flip his hips, and create running lanes for Florida. This year, though, I saw a bit more of that ability to translate some of that get off and some of that speed into some more displacement. He's not going to be a guy that throws dudes around and is like just an absolute monster out there, but he's going to be a guy that at worst is going to neutralize a player, or if not, he can overwhelm them with some of his footwork, being able to run through contact and really move on through blocks and play through guys as opposed to standing them up and staying there. So he unlocked a different level for me this year. I definitely think I should have been a little bit higher coming out in the summer because he was that level of athlete, and you got to kind of put your trust, kind of a lesson learned for the summer scouting process. But for me, the leap from watching his film from last year in preparation for him to come out last year to watching it for this year in preparation for him to come out this year definitely took that next step up to be a player that I'm considering being at center one this draft class.
I haven't gone that far as trying to figure out where he fits in amongst all the other centers, but I will say this. I think athletically at 6'5", 303, I mean, I'm trying to figure out why he is playing center and he's not playing outside. I mean, he's that athletic. I think the thing that sticks out to you when you watch Slaughter is he runs so well. He moves fluidly, he moves effortlessly. And I think, his footwork and those types of things, his second level work, up on linebackers, he communicates well. You can tell he's got a high IQ. Those things are elite. And, when you're looking at outside zone teams that like to utilize pin and pull, a lot of the high leverage type guys, like this is a guy that I could see in Buffalo with Cromer, who values movement and lateral displacement as opposed to vertical displacement. This guy could be a star. I mean, I think he's got that kind of athleticism. Because he's so athletic, he wins a lot of blocks with that athleticism as opposed to power and movement. I think that he has some, if you watch him, more stout type defensive linemen that maybe aren't as long, I don't think he has a problem with getting past them and turning them and walling them off and those types of things. I think where he has issues is when he's playing off or defensive linemen, that are as long as he is. Length for length, if that makes sense. And one of the things that I always hated playing against when I was in the league and even in college was defensive linemen that have length. They can get their hands on you quick and control you as opposed to the other way around. Length is really hard to deal with inside, and I think that he has some issues with length. But when you watch him, I mean, he's an effortless athlete. He's got movement like a Lou and those guys, but he's got 6'5", 303 size. And this is a guy that comes in. I believe last year he was the top-rated center in the SEC from PFF. And let me do another thing. I'm not a PFF disciple. I think a lot of what they talk about is BS, but you can translate that into some of the things we talk about. So obviously, played well last year as a junior, but he comes in and, like I said, if he wants to improve himself, I think the biggest areas of improvement for him are the opposite of what we see from some of these other guys. He needs to have an anchor and play with some more strength, which can be stressed with longer guys, in the 1s and 3 techniques. So I think this guy's really good. Like I said, effortless type stuff, right scheme. He could be he could be a star, maybe an immediate starter. But there is stuff he needs to work on. But his athletic profile, along with his 6'5", 303, is different than you see out of a lot of guys playing that position.
Jared, do you like Lalulu better, or it's still too early to tell?
Lalulu was with who again?
Oregon.
Okay. All right. I think Slaughter has a better athletic profile than Lalulu. I like the fact that Lalulu is a little bit, you can tell he's a little bit half-cocked, and he plays with an edge, and he plays on the edge all the time. I like competitors inside. I think there's a very, very it's an underrated aspect of offensive line play, which is playing physical with toughness and intimidating people. So I like that part of Lalulu. But as far as, comparison to athleticism and stuff, Slaughter is he's an Olympic figure skater compared to Lalulu, and Lalulu's pretty damn good. I don't know if Owen agrees with me or not, but that what Slaughter does that position athletically is pretty. You don't see that very often.
No, yeah, I that's why when I was lower on him last year, going back and watching it now, I was already like, all right, I don't know. I know like there's a lot of other things that go into playing center than just being able to move like that, but you can translate that, and when he eventually learned to weaponize it more in different ways to translate that into performing better at the rest of the position outside of just beating guys to the spot and walling off and trying to be a better athlete, especially because I believe when I had him listed last year, he was in like the 290 range. The fact that he's over 300 now, and that really shows up. Like in the Texas game, he was head up on Cole Brevard, who was a guy I really love coming out of this class as like a 320, 330 pound plus nose tackle who's got some juice to him. And length, and he was able to kind of stand him up. And like I said, he's not going to throw him around and clear out that gap, but he can neutralize him, be able to use a lot of his athleticism to wall him off and get to the spot before he can, even though he is a big guy who has some good athleticism. So he was able to take some of the stuff that I really liked last year, amp it up to 11 this year with that movement ability, and while still adding on more weight and growing more into his frame. So, well, yeah, I think the fact that he's so athletic is surprising that he's playing at the pivot position, especially in college, especially as consistently as he has been. It may have been a situation where it helps him out in the long run, where now you have this guy that's been a consistent starter at center for Florida, and you have to try to project him inside or project him around in different positions he hasn't played. This guy comes in, you know what he can do at center. You can see that he already is able to translate some of those super athletic traits to center because he's been doing it, and then that can project a lot cleaner to the NFL and be a guy that I wouldn't be surprised if a team was in dire need of a center at the back half of the first. They're looking like, okay, this guy can be a difference maker, similar to what we saw with like Linderbaum when the Ravens took him in like the 20s a few years ago.
The funny thing about Slaughter too is he has some issues fitting doubles because he already has the natural anticipation because he's the guy snapping the ball, and he's so dang athletic that he's out of his stance and gone half the time, almost a count before everybody else. And, he almost has to slow down a little bit to get those fits a little bit better. But, yeah, good prospect. He'll play in the league. Like I said, this is a guy that you could see him in Buffalo running outside zone with those guys very easily.
Okay, next player, Jude Bowry from Boston College, 6'5", 311. Jerry, what did you see?
Bowry is an interesting prospect because first and foremost, he is absolutely massive. I mean, he's 6'5", 311, but he looks even bigger than that. I'd love to hear what his arm span is when he gets to the combine. I like him. I like him quite a bit. I don't know if he is I don't know if he's a true left tackle in the league. I think maybe you could move him to right tackle. I think with work and more technique work and different things like that and getting used to the speed of the defensive ends in the NFL, he could possibly stay at left tackle. He's got pretty good footwork as far as quickness for his size. He can move a little bit. He does get in a three-point stance quite a bit, which I would expect with Bill O'Brien as my head coach. So, and he looked damn good in it too, man. It was a good-looking three-point stance. It wasn't a sloppy one where he looked like he was taking a crap on his heels. I mean, he was balanced up and ready to go. I think he is comfortable moving and those types of things. Again, another big dude that when his hands are inside, he shows really good anchor and ability to move people. When his hands are outside, he loses all that advantage that he has, and he's still a little bit inconsistent with his hand usage. But I think he's a steady lineman. He doesn't seem to get out of sorts, doesn't get over his feet too much, doesn't get out of control. So yeah, I mean, he's a guy that has definite ability. I think he can play inside and out. I think he has. My biggest thing would be, is it not really, can he play, inside and out? Is he really a left tackle where he's playing at Boston College as opposed to, a true blue power right tackle? And then have him maybe as a guy that could be a swing guy. So I don't think he's really zone scheme specific. He can run zone, he can run gap, do all those things. But definitely things to work on. Those independent hands, that hand usage, and just sometimes in anchoring, as most tall guys do, and we talked about it earlier with some of these guys, as the rep goes on, instead of dropping your hips down and back, you raise up and you get tall, which again takes your advantage away. So I'd like to see him make sure he continues to work on keeping his leverage, keeping his base down and back, and staying lower and not letting those pads get high. So I do like him. I mean, I still think he's developing too, physically. He could probably get stronger, and which will help him even more. But yeah, I mean, as far as a projection right now, I mean, I would say probably like 4 or 5, somewhere in there, is where I would probably have him early day 3. Maybe if he finishes the year really, really good in these last 3 games and impresses people at the combine, maybe sneak into day 2, like in the 3rd round. But I'd say probably early day 3 is a guy that has traits that one day could make him a starter, but definitely has to probably back up positions as a swing tackle, swing guard, and work on some things.
So with Bowry, he's a guy that I think Jerry hit it on the head with. I'm curious to see what his arm length comes in at, because he has the size of 6'5", 311. He moves pretty well with his footwork. I just don't know if he can survive at left tackle in the NFL. I do think if he's your right tackle and you're looking against a lot of teams that have some more athletically juiced up guys who are going to be rushing from the face up, you're going to want a guy that can also mirror match with that. And you're seeing that as a trend more in the NFL. So if you're a player like Bowry, who maybe was a career left tackle but could make that switch over to the right, that may up his stock quite a bit. I liked a lot about him. I think he's able to move really well, especially laterally. And he has that edge with him where he's able to utilize a lot of his size to play with some nastiness. And if he was in a scheme that allowed him to be able to move and keep working more in space but still have that size advantage to bury guys, that'll be where he's at his best. I do think he can work in some more power schemes, specifically because he does have some of that nastiness and that size to his game as well. But I think I would like him most preferably in that first category than the second. For me, when it comes to his deficiencies right now, what's kind of holding me back from giving him glowing reviews is what Jerry was talking about. He plays a bit high, especially later into the rep where you're expecting him, and that's why I don't think I super love him as a one-on-one power blocker. Is because when he's coming downhill, he can get tendency to get high, especially if you watch the game against Clemson. A lot of times those D linemen who are going to be top-end players were able to get underneath his pads and shed off his blocks because he wasn't able to really stick to him and stay at that leverage point and get some push he does against some other lesser competition he plays against. As well as with when he's in pass sets, I do think he has quick feet. He's able to get depth really well. Just for me, a lot of times when he did get beat, it was because his feet did stop on contact a bit. Right. And they found him and get past him. So you have all that athleticism, and even if you have the length checkmarked, you can't allow your feet to die on you, and then now you're still able to get the outside hip and run around you or turn it back inside and beat you back inside because now you're playing the catch-up game.
And your feet die when your hands are wrong, if that makes sense. When your hands aren't where they're supposed to be, you can't use your feet because you then lose your hand placement. You lose that translation ability. And then you go to grabbing leads to raising up, and it turns into a wrestling match as opposed to finishing with leverage and foot quickness. Because really good finishers are guys who have inside hand placement. They can run their feet. with their base. They got their hips down and back, and they finish that way because as that defensive lineman is trying to make a move and come off, now his pressure's different. They feel that pressure go away, and they chase it, and then you finish. I don't think Bowry's a stiff guy either. When I think he can bend a little bit. I just think some of this, for whatever reason, and I find it weird because these college strength coaches nowadays, man, they have these kids so long, they do so much that you would think there'd be more development out of an older kid, but maybe, sometimes the lower body and the upper body aren't connected, right? So they don't really work together. So you got to work on that core strength. You got to work on that hip strength and those types of things to where you tie those two things together. Now you're able to stay down and back, have your hands inside and all that. I don't mind him at all. I like him. I have him definitely rated higher than the kid at Illinois that we talked about last week. I think he's got all the traits that we'd like to see out of the Illinois kid. I think the Illinois kid's probably a better athlete. I think he's got, probably, maybe a little bit more untapped potential. I think you can see more flashes of athleticism out of him, but he doesn't have some of these other intangibles that Bowry has as far as some of the nastiness and willingness to want to finish blocks and that type of stuff. So what I'm curious about him is this: whatever team he's on, if he's an average athlete at left tackle, does he all of a sudden go to right guard and now become an above average athlete at right guard? How does that translate? So, and I think wherever he does go, he will get an opportunity to play inside as well as outside, wherever he goes, because they're going to want to see if he's got that, translation between spots.
So do you guys think that Bowry checks all of the boxes for playing tackle? Meaning that the kick inside to me sounds more like athleticism, but like from an arm length.
Well, here's what I was getting at, Jim, is that an average athlete outside that's trying to block Micah Parsons in a wide 9 and as a left tackle, that maybe not quite athletic enough to do that. If you move him closer to the ball, all of a sudden he becomes more athletic.
Yep.
Because he's got guys on each side of him. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And that's the point I was trying to make with Bowry, as opposed to, I'm not saying that, I mean, when I look at athletes of the guys we're talking about today, the guy that translates to left tackle more than anybody is Slaughter, the center at Florida. I mean, that sucker could go out and probably pass set by the end of the day and be fine, right? Now, granted, he has issues with anchor and those types of things, but athletically and just doing the technique, I've got no doubt that he could do it. But that's what I was trying to get at is like you take a guy at one position and, maybe he's a big safety that's not quite, fleet of foot to be a coverage safety. He's more of a banger, right? Now all of a sudden I move him in and put him at weak side off-ball linebacker, and all of a sudden he's the most athletic off-ball linebacker in the league. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think for me, athletically, at least at the college level, like the film we evaluated, he's definitely the athlete at the college level to play tackle. No question about that. I don't know and the length for me plays a lot into their athletic profile in general, especially with tackles, because he was a guy that there were plays where I'm like, okay, I can see the length there. It pops out. He's able to get hands on. Other times I'm like, okay, I need to actually get like a verified measurement here, because there's plays where he just doesn't play up to it. Even if he does measure up to that length, he doesn't play up to it. And whether that's because he just doesn't have the length, or even if he does, there's sometimes where it looks like he maybe be a step too late to activating it or being able to utilize it most comfortably. So when you're in that situation, I think between size, movement ability, like Jerry was saying, if he's an average offensive tackle, you would rather put him out of tackle than a guy that we've talked about that is not, or is going to be having a kick inside the guard. Like you'd rather move him out there than like a Pregnon to tackle specifically.
I think
he just seems.
Yeah.
Or go ahead, Jim. Go ahead, Jerry.
No, I was going to say, I think in the college game nowadays, the massive size and width is more important than the athletic profile. And if you can find both, it's different. But in a lot of these places, they run so much RPO and so much quick game and so much, with a running quarterback, that if I'm affecting the pocket and the width of the pocket by the size and just massiveness of the player, I don't need him to drive catch and carry this guy for 10 yards. Yeah, we'd like him to, But if he's got to run around this massive guy, the ball's already gone. So I think that's where a lot of these guys we're seeing now in college, look at all these tackles we evaluated over three weeks. It's all the same. It's all the same thing. And, he's playing tackle, but really I think he's an inside guy. He's a guard. And they all have the same build. They're all 6'5" and taller. They're all 300, whatever pounds or bigger. And they're all big, wide dudes. So a lot of times in college nowadays with the RPO game and going away from a lot of the drive catch stuff you see out of tackles in the league to more of we get our width with either our split or our initial step, and then we're straight back in a vertical pass technique. That's why that's why the vertical set came to be. It's an air raid principle from Mike Leach, to where he was like, I don't care about the athleticism as much as their height and their width, and we're going to line them up 3.5 yards away from each other. And now the corner, instead of being 5 yards from the quarterback, is now 15 yards from the quarterback. You know what I'm saying? So they're manipulating stuff more with these massive size than just athletic profiles and everything. I think that's where it's hard. That's why I think it's easy when you see one, they just stick out, right? Like you're like, wow, that's one. Because they look so different than a lot of these guys like Bowry and some of these big, massive tackles, Bear from Pittsburgh, that are really out there because of their length and their width as opposed to their athletic profile. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I think, especially like with guys we're going to talk about here, or we've already previously talked about, where like, bam, that's a tackle, no question about it, that's going to be an offensive tackle. Whereas Bowry is a guy that I also have those questions, like, am I going to kick him inside? I think if I'm drafting him, I want to see him at tackle, at least, because I do think, opposed to some of the other guys, he's a bit more fleet of foot, has some more of the athleticism, even if it's not utilized to the furthest extent at the college level like you're talking about. But he's the guy that his profile makes me take a second look at him at tackle, whereas some of these other guys, it's absolutely like, okay, this guy's moving inside. He's just out there because of what you're talking about, that more RPOs, heavy schematic shift in the college game there.
Okay, 2 more tackles to go. Lance Hurd from Tennessee. Now, he has more eligibility left. No guarantee he's in this draft class. He is draft eligible, but we're covering him in the event that he declares. Jerry, what did you think of Lance Hurd from Tennessee?
When I watch him, I mean, this is, again, another 2-point guy that is in a bad 2-point stance, let alone a 3-point stance. He's a bit top heavy, skinny legged. He plays kind of high. He's a leaner and a leverager. Now he's aggressive, and he's going to try to take shots at you, hit you. He's competitive. He gets after it. Again, that Tennessee pass game is a quick pass game. It's not a lot of sitting around very long in the backfield with the quarterback. I don't know if he's a left tackle. I think he's probably a right tackle, because I don't even know if he translates to guard, because he's just kind of, he's, like I said, the way he's built, he's got some longer legs. I don't know how comfortable he'd be in a 3-point. He can move vertically well. Another guy that raises up high and has problems finishing because he goes from low to high as opposed to high to low. And he's got inconsistent hand usage. A lot of the same habits we're seeing from these other guys. I do think he's a competitor. I do think he has quickness. I do think he'll finish when he can, and all those things. But, yeah, I would actually probably like to see him go back to school. I think it would probably help him a little bit. And I know, and in the world of NIL, if I want to be 100% honest with him, and I'm sure he's there because he gets paid very, very well, if he wants to help himself, if there's a team out there that runs more of a pro set type offense, I think it would help him to go to it and play for a year in it and get that film put out there and learn those techniques. Because right now at Tennessee, with what Heupel does, it's your typical spread game type stuff and number manipulation and RPO game and all of that. But, yeah, I mean, I like him. I think he's got something to him. I wonder where he fits draft-wise. I also wonder if he can play inside, where these other guys, I think it's a pretty clean transfer to inside. I wonder a little bit with him if he can or not.
Owen, how about you?
Not much to add, to be honest, because Hurd was a guy that I was after the first couple snaps. Or first like half a game. I was more like, okay, this is more of a guy that I think similar to what Jerry concluded with was you go back to school, and if you can transfer out, if you can go to like Bama and replace Proctor as soon as he leaves, like just go to a team that you can step in that they can pay you the same if you can get that same deal. I'm not sure what he's getting paid, but find a place where it makes sense for you, obviously, but a guy that has some check marks, has the physical tools you look for, a bit stiff in the stance, longer lower body, and has a bit more weight up top, like Jerry was saying. So I didn't love the idea of kicking him to guard. He's one of those players that I'm watching, like, okay, if he can figure out a tackle, I'd love him. But if he can't figure out a tackle, he's not one of those players that can be, in the worst case scenario, kick him inside. I think he's way more boomer bust than some of these other players we will talk about. So I was there. Same with Jerry. Go back to school, keep building on those traits you've already shown. And I mean, for most guys, I'll say if you want to get looked at for more of a pro prospect, which going back to school is going to be doing that. Get out of Tennessee, go find an offense that's going to be more pro ready for you. Even some of the skill position players at Tennessee usually suffer with their NFL careers or draft stock just from playing at that school in general. So I definitely think he should look to maybe some other ventures if he does go back.
He tends to seem like he has some stiffness to him. He's definitely a waist bender as opposed to a hip bender. Him finishing high, he does tend to, just watching him in his 2-point stance, he tends to have some stiffness to him that I haven't seen out of some of the other tackle prospects that we talked about today.
Okay, and then the last player we're covering today, Kadyn Proctor from Alabama, 6'7", 366. Owen, is that a misprint on the height and weight?
That's what I have him listed at right now. Yep, 6'7", 366 is what PFF has him listed at.
Yeah, so what did you think, Owen?
Absolutely massive human being. Something about Alabama and getting these giant dudes. Previously, it was like the Evan Neals of the world. And it's just that kind of brand of football they run where you have these massive human beings doing massive human being things, throwing guys around, collapsing defenders, being able to pave roads for his running backs. It's no surprise that you see players come out of there, and you got a bunch of running backs coming out of Alabama, a bunch of these offensive linemen coming out because they're able to just breed that type of player and generate that kind of buzz for players like this. I'm a big fan of Proctor. I think especially for a guy his size, he can move decently well. You never want to worry about a guy at that size being able to exist on the outside because similar to what we talked about with Hurd, there's not a lot of places he can go to that he'll be an interior player. So I think if he's going to survive, he's going to have to be at tackle. But I have much less question marks about him fitting more as an athlete, being less stiff, being more smooth with it when it comes to getting in his pass sets and just playing out in space a bit more, has all that length in the world. I do think for me, and I'm curious to see what Jerry has to say about this, the one big thing that I saw in the summer scouting process, and which really hasn't been cleaned up all that much this season, was when he does get beat, it's with his hands, and it's because he's allowing defenders to get into his chest. The reason I fell in love with TJ Guy over the summer so much was that he was able to convert speed to power through Proctor's chest, and despite being 366 pounds, he kind of succeeds ground too much where he's getting hit in the chest. Big example of when you control that chest instead of the shoulders, you can generate a lot more power, even when you're the smaller guy in the relationship there. So when he's getting beat, he's opening his chest up by not using his hands as well, and those guys are able to drive him backwards. So for a guy that has that size, who has all the other things that you're wanting to check off on the box there, if he can continue to work on that and clean that up, then I'm going to be a lot more on board with him. But as of right now, he's definitely a player that I'm going to take a swing at, and hopefully that I can teach him up and coach him up through that because he has all the other stuff that I'm really looking for in an NFL offensive tackle prospect.
Proctor's a freak. I mean, there's no other way to look at it. I mean, he's a 6'7", 300-pound freak. And, he flashes, a lot of special abilities as far as his play. I don't know if he can play inside either. I just think he's a tackle. I see him as a right tackle and a good one at that. I think he's going to be one of your higher-rated guys, probably a first-rounder. I think the thing about Proctor that makes me a little bit, I don't want to say angry, but I get a little bit frustrated is sometimes I think I don't know if it's boredom or he's so confident in his strength abilities that he'll get beat one-on-one and give up plays because of it. It's almost like he gets lazy. But I think part of it has to do with the fact that he just gets so confident in his size and strength that he gets a little bit laxed in his play. But I just think that he's I think he has the ability to be a mauler or not. I think really the thing with Proctor is going to be, because he's a special player. I mean, there's what you see is what you get. And a guy that big and the way he looks, he can play left tackle and play left tackle well. The thing's going to be this: is he translate to a guy that's going to be a perennial Pro Bowler that maybe has a chance to go to the Hall of Fame, or is he going to end up like the last guy that looked like him that played at Bama, which was DJ Fluker? And we know how his story went, that he was a kind of a journeyman, eventually moved inside the guard and kind of flamed out in the league. So, yeah, just a guy that looks the part, does things that others don't do. I think the evaluation of him is very, very easy. I just would like to see a little bit more urgency in winning every rep, as opposed to allowing some of these guys to get clean wins on him when he shouldn't be giving up clean wins to him. I want to see a little bit more urgency out of his competitiveness and finish and nastiness and all that, because he has the ability to be a game changer and a game wrecker. But like I said, sometimes I think maybe he just relies on his strength a little bit too much and gives up some easy losses when he shouldn't. But, yeah, Proctor's a special guy. I think you'll see him probably picked in the first round. Where in the first round, I'm not sure. It'll be interesting to see what he does at the combine when we see all of his measurables and stuff. And then what does he show up at the combine? What weight does he show up at? Does he try to cut some weight to run the 40 better, to do the O-line drills better and those types of things? That'll be interesting as well. But, yeah, really special player.
Okay, so I believe, that finishes up the players for today. So how are we feeling about the offensive line class so far, Jerry?
Me? I don't think there's very many first-round guys. I really don't. I think there's a ton of depth. I think day 2, day 3, early day 3, and day 2, there's going to be a ton of guys taken. I don't think, unless there's a big run on linemen early and then guys are, panicking to have to get one, I don't see a ton of first-round guys right now in this draft class. But I do see a lot of potential, and I see a lot of depth, and I see a lot of guys that will get picked in that day 2, early day 3 range. And I think there's a ton of value in it right now.
Owen, how about you? How you feeling about the offensive line class with what you've seen through the summer and what you've seen already?
So for me, the guys that are going to be like true offensive tackle prospects, I think you got a bit more of the top heavy there, where you got some day 1 guys and some good day 2 players there, where you're going to look at those players specifically. But of the guys that you're like, 50-50, leaning more towards interior or just true interior inside guys, I'm with Jerry. I don't have like a true first round film grade in any of them. The only guy that I have that has with the positional multiplier gets in there is Ione from Penn State with his positional multiplier. I have him as a first round grade, but everyone else is knocking on the door there with the interior guys. Like how Jerry was saying, round 2, round 3, round 4, those are going to be the stacked ones. If you need a guy that maybe he's going to start right away, or you need a guy that can eventually earn his spot there over his rookie season or going into year 2, you have an abundance there. So for teams that are looking for interior blockers, you'll be happy, especially if you're going to be one of those better teams that are picking later on the first round or in those middle day 2 picks. But if you're looking for some good offensive tackles, you might want to be more towards the top end of those rounds to be able to land your guys there this year.
When do we evaluate Spencer Fano?
Jerry, you just queued me right up. That's next week.
Thank goodness.
I've
been waiting for this one.
Okay.
That's been my guy since the summer. I've absolutely loved him, so I'm excited for this one.
So next week we're talking about Trey Zune from Texas A&M, Cage Casey from Boise State, Jaden Roberts from Alabama, Josh Thompson from LSU, Fernando Carmona from Arkansas, PJ Williams from SMU, Spencer Fano from Utah, Najee Harris from Florida, and Logan Taylor from Boston College. So,
how does Boston College have the record they have with this many draftable offensive linemen?
You might be able to ask the same question about Florida.
It's true. That is true. That is true. Especially with O'Brien coaching them. I like Bill O'Brien. I guess it's probably hard to recruit other positions up there. I should know that they should be able to a good Catholic school like Boston College should be able to get some offensive linemen.
So one of the players we're covering next week, Josh Thompson from LSU, he played at Northwestern in 2024. But when we covered him in the summer, because he had transferred to LSU, he popped on tape. I remember Alex from Hail Mary Sports, like he said he didn't even have to watch a full game. He says he watched like 5 reps of Josh Thompson and said, oh, yeah, that's somebody that I need on my watch list. But I'm really curious what we have to say on Josh Thompson as well as Spencer Fano for the group that we have next week. So, Owen, you want to plug the weekly huddle, let everybody know all the other stuff that you do?
Yeah, so I have over on YouTube and Twitter at Weekly Huddle. You can find me there talking stuff about whether it's NFL draft stuff or just NFL things in general. I kind of cover everything there. We're going to be picking up the upload schedule as the winter rolls in here. But for right now, I'm going to be here on Tuesdays with Jerry here, covering offensive line prospects, and on Wednesdays with Newt covering defensive line prospects. So come back again tomorrow at 9 p.m. You can see me again there. If you just don't, you can't get enough of this. So this sweet, silky voice. That's definitely not sleep exhaustion.
Like, Owen, I can't get enough. I'm doing right. We have 2 podcasts every day. I can't get enough.
Well, here's what I'm trying to figure out. How do you end up having the time to do 2 podcasts a day with everybody?
You know what? I am one of those people that
I wasn't talking about you. I was talking about Jim, the great facilitator.
So that's what
I'm talking about.
This is my hobby, right? Okay. Like this is I've got a decent day job as an engineer, and then this is my hobby.
I have to say that I love your background. My son Owen has in his room has a CD case wall display like that.
I would be curious how many CDs your son and I have, because Jerry and I are approximately the same age.
Let's put it to you this way. You'll know how many CDs Jerry had because the CDs on his wall are Jerry's, not his, because he was from a day and age of iPhones. So I think that's why he did it, because it was so intriguing to him. This thing, what is this thing, right? But his wall's just like yours, so it's pretty cool.
So Jerry, if you had to give me 2 or 3 songs on your like favorite playlist,
probably She Sells Sanctuary from the Cult, and then probably let me think. Probably Orange Crush from REM.
Okay,
I'm still stuck in 80s college alternative, Jim.
Oh, well, you see, in like REM, that was when I was in college too. Like I said, you and I are about the same age.
I still think I'm at fraternity parties at the University of Tulsa listening to music and.
Were you in a fraternity?
Beer. No. I just went to the parties.
Okay.
Yeah, I was in a fraternity. It was called the football team.
There you go. So,
but no, I listen to all different kinds of music.
I resemble that.
I listen to all different kinds of music, but no, those are 2 that I would have on my playlist for sure.
Awesome. Well, Jerry, do you want to go plug all of your other podcasts and radio shows?
Yeah, you can listen to us on the Overreaction Buffalo Sports Network. We're on there. We have shows every day of the week, Monday through Friday. We even have a pregame show on Saturdays with Anthony Marino. My show's on Wednesday night. It's called 7 Days of Sunday. I'm on with Zig Fracassi, who is a Sirius XM host on their NFL channel. Zig and I become friends from doing spots with them on the weekend, and him and I chop it up about the Bills, obviously, and then also do what's called the Bill Squad show with morning show host Jeremy White from WGR, and then Joe Marino of Locked On, and we do that 2 days a week. We do that on Thursdays, and then an instant reaction post-game show. Sometimes it's the afternoon after, depending upon schedules, but we do 2 shows a week on Bill Squad as well, so stay pretty busy.
Yep. And shout out to Joe Marino. So ironically, I met Owen in Joe Marino's subtext. So that's where Owen
Really?
and I met.
Okay.
So, so definitely, I'll definitely plug that. So that's a good group of people inside of Joe's subtext. And
for sure,
I watch Bill's Squad and some of the Locked On content.
Right.
When you podcast twice a day, there's only so much time.
That is true. That is true.
But for Jerry, for Owen, for myself, for the 110 people at the Draft Professor, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you on a podcast again tomorrow.
All right, later.